On the 5th of July, 2009, a man named Terry Herbert walked across a farmer's field in Staffordshire with a 2 pounds 50 metal detector he'd bought at a car boot sale. Over the next 5 days, he pulled 3,500 pieces of Anglo-Saxon gold from the earth. Garnets, sword fittings, a gold helmet fragment older than England itself. Experts valued the hoard at £3.285 million. Terry Herbert kept none of it, not one piece, not one fragment, not 1 gram of gold. Because of a law passed in 1996, built on a legal principle from 1276, the Crown had first claim on everything he found. And if you own property in England or Wales, the same law applies to you. Here's what most people assume. You buy a house. You own the land. You dig up your garden to build an extension. You find something, old coins, a Roman brooch, a medieval ring. You assume it's yours. You bought the land. You own the soil. You found the object. Surely that makes it your property. It doesn't. Under the Treasure Act, 1996, Chapter 24, Section 4, any object meeting the legal definition of treasure must be reported to the local coroner within 14 days of discovery. Not the police, not the council, the coroner. Failure to report carries a penalty of up to 3 months' imprisonment or an unlimited fine. Let me say that again. Unlimited. There is no cap. You find gold coins in your own garden. You put them in a drawer. You tell no one. You have just committed a criminal offense. And most property owners in England and Wales have absolutely no idea. If you own property, or ever plan to, this is one of those laws worth understanding before it fines you. Subscribe to this channel because we investigate the financial ghosts hiding in British law. Laws that have transferred trillions. Laws that still cost families millions. This one could cost you everything you dig up. So what exactly does the Treasure Act 1996 define as treasure? The definition is precise and broader than most people expect. Under Section 1 of the Act, an object is legally treasure if it meets any of these criteria. First, any metallic object, other than a coin, that is at least 300 years old and contains at least 10% precious metal by weight. A medieval silver spoon, a Tudor gold ring, a Saxon brooch. If it's 300 years old and 1/10 precious metal, it's treasure. It belongs to the Crown. Second, any group of 2 or more metallic objects found together from the same period if they're at least 300 years old. Find 2 bronze Roman brooches side by side? That's treasure, even if they contain no gold, even if they contain no silver. The grouping alone triggers the act. Third, any group of 2 or more coins from the same find if they're at least 300 years old. And here's the critical detail. If those coins contain less than 10% precious metal, you need at least 10 coins to trigger the act. But if they contain more than 10% precious metal, 2 coins is enough. 2 coins. Find 2 old silver pennies side by side in your vegetable patch, and you are now legally required to contact the coroner. Fourth, any object, regardless of metal content, found in the same location as treasure. This is the catch-all. You find a gold ring and a pottery fragment together. The ring is treasure, and now the pottery fragment is treasure too, simply by proximity. Fifth, and this was added later through the Treasure Designation Order 2002, any prehistoric base metal assemblage, meaning any group of 2 or more prehistoric metallic objects found together. Bronze Age tools, Iron Age weapons, Celtic decorations. No precious metal required, just old, just together, just yours, until you find them. The scope of this law is remarkable, and it was designed to be. To understand why the Crown claims your garden discoveries, we need to go back 750 years. The principle of treasure trove, from the Norman French trésor trouvé, meaning found treasure, has been part of English law since at least 1276. Under the original common law doctrine, any gold or silver found hidden in the earth with no identifiable owner belonged automatically to the Crown. The reasoning was feudal and absolute. The king owned all land. Subjects merely held land at the king's pleasure. Therefore, anything hidden within that land was the king's property, waiting to be recovered. This wasn't about archaeology. This wasn't about preservation. This was about revenue. In the 13th century, treasure finds were a genuine source of royal income. The Crown appointed special keepers, coroners of the king's treasure, whose entire job was to investigate reports of found valuables and secure them for the monarch. If you found a hoard of silver coins in 1280 and failed to report it, you could be imprisoned. Your property could be seized. Your village could be fined collectively. The entire community was financially liable for unreported treasure. 700 years later, the legal principle is the same. The penalties are lighter. The mechanism is gentler. But the fundamental claim has not changed. What you find under British soil does not belong to you. It belongs to the Crown. The 1996 Act replaced the common law doctrine because the old system had a critical flaw. It only applied to objects deliberately hidden with the intention of recovery. If someone lost a gold ring accidentally, it wasn't treasure trove. The finder could keep it. If someone buried gold coins intending to come back, it was treasure trove. The Crown took it. This created a problem. Archaeologists and museum curators watched as finders claimed, truthfully or not, that their discoveries were lost rather than hidden. The 1996 Act eliminated that distinction entirely. Hidden or lost, deliberate or accidental, buried with intention or dropped by chance. If it meets the definition, the Crown takes it. The loophole was closed, and £340 million in treasure has been claimed since. If you're finding this useful, or slightly alarming, hit the like button. It helps more property owners discover what's hiding in their legal obligations, and leave a comment. Have you ever found anything valuable? Did you know about this law? So the law exists. The Crown's claim is clear. But does anyone actually enforce this? Yes, consistently, and with increasing frequency. In 2022, the Portable Antiquities Scheme recorded 1,378 treasure cases reported to coroners across England and Wales. That's the highest number ever recorded in a single year. In 2021, it was 1,219. In 2020, despite lockdowns, 1,094. The numbers have been rising steadily since 1997, when the Act came into force, and just 201 cases were reported. That means the system is working. More fines are being reported, more treasure is being claimed by the Crown, and more finders are learning, sometimes too late, that their discovery was never theirs to keep. But here's what happens when someone doesn't report. In 2019, 2 metal detectorists in County Durham found a hoard of Viking coins and jewelry worth an estimated £12 million. They didn't report it. Instead, they attempted to sell individual pieces privately. They told no one about the full extent of the find. When investigators eventually recovered the hoard, or what remained of it, both men were prosecuted. Not just fined. Prosecuted criminally under Section 8 of the Treasure Act. George Powell was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. Leighton Davies received 8.5 years. 10 years for not reporting found treasure. And here's the detail that makes this case particularly painful. If they had simply reported the find legally, they would have been entitled to a reward equal to the full market value of the hoard. Split with the landowner, yes, but potentially £6 million each. Instead, they received prison sentences. The treasure was largely lost, many pieces have never been recovered, and 2 families were destroyed. The law enforcement is real, the consequences are severe, and the irony is devastating. They would have been millionaires if they'd followed the law. But prosecution isn't the norm. Most cases proceed through the standard process. You find something, you report it to the coroner within 14 days. The coroner holds an inquest. Yes, a formal inquest, the same legal process used for unexplained deaths. The British Museum or National Museum Wales examines the find. An independent committee of experts, the Treasure Valuation Committee, determines the market value. If a museum wants to acquire the treasure, they pay that valuation. The money goes to the finder and the landowner, split equally unless they've agreed otherwise. If no museum wants it, it's returned to the finder. Which sounds almost reasonable, until you look at the actual numbers. Let's go back to Terry Herbert, July 2009, Staffordshire. The largest hoard of Anglo-Saxon gold ever found in Britain. 3,500 pieces, 5 kilograms of gold, 1.3 kilograms of silver. Artifacts dating to the 7th century, 1,400 years old. The Treasure Valuation Committee assessed the hoard at £3.285 million. That's the market value. What the items would fetch at auction, what a private collector would pay. Under the Treasure Act, that's the reward Terry Herbert and the landowner Fred Johnson were entitled to. £3.285 million, split equally. £1.6 million each, approximately. Now, the Birmingham Museum and Stoke-on-Trent Museum jointly acquired the hoard. They paid £3.285 million to secure it. That money came from the Heritage Lottery Fund, the Art Fund, and public donations. And here's where the financial story gets uncomfortable. Today, that hoard is estimated to be worth between £12 million and £20 million. Terry Herbert received his £1.6 million in 2010. 15 years later, the objects he pulled from the earth with his own hands are worth 10 times what he was paid. The museums hold assets that have appreciated by over 400%. Terry Herbert, who found them, who spent 5 days on his hands and knees in a farmer's field, who made one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in British history, got a fixed payment that represents roughly 10% of today's value. Is that fair? The law says it is. The Treasure Valuation Committee determines the price at the time of acquisition. There is no mechanism for future appreciation sharing. The finder gets today's value. The institution gets tomorrow's growth. And this pattern repeats across hundreds of cases. The Hoxton Hoard, found in 1992 in Suffolk, 15,234 Roman coins, 200 silver spoons, and dozens of gold objects, valued at £1.75 million. Peter Watling, who found it, received half, approximately £875,000. The hoard is now valued at over £5 million. The British Museum holds an asset that has tripled in value. Peter Watling's reward remained fixed. The Ringlemere Cup, a rare Bronze Age gold vessel found in Kent in 2001, valued and acquired for £270,000. Current estimated value? Over £1 million. The Froome Hoard, 52,503 Roman coins found in Somerset in 2010. The largest coin hoard ever found in Britain, valued at £320,250. Current value? Significantly higher. In every case, the pattern is identical. The finder receives the valuation at the moment of acquisition, fixed, final, non-negotiable. The institution receives an appreciating asset, often increasing in value by hundreds of % over decades. The wealth transfer is systematic, not because the law intends injustice, but because the law doesn't account for time, and time, when it comes to ancient gold, is where the real money lives. So what does this mean if you own property in England or Wales? Let me be clear, this is not legal advice. Every situation is different. Consult a qualified solicitor for guidance on your specific circumstances. But here's what informed people generally understand about this area of law. First, know the 14-day rule. If you find anything that could meet the definition of treasure, any metallic object over 300 years old, any group of old coins, any precious metal artifact, you have 14 days to report it to the district coroner. Not the police, not the local museum, the coroner. 14 days. After that, you are potentially committing a criminal offense. Second, understand what happens during renovation. If you're renovating a period property, and millions of British homes are Georgian, Victorian, or older, anything found during construction must be treated with awareness. Builders, contractors, and homeowners have all triggered the Treasure Act during routine renovations. Coins in walls, jewelry under floorboards, silverware buried in gardens. Know the law before you lift the floorboards. Third, get it in writing with your landowner. If you have permission to metal detect on someone else's land, the split of any reward should be agreed in writing before you start searching. The default under the Act is a 50-50 split between finder and landowner. But disputes over this split have cost families tens of thousands in legal fees. A simple written agreement before you begin could save you years of litigation. Fourth, document everything. Photograph the find in the ground before removing it. Note the exact location, record the depth, preserve the context. This matters because the Treasure Valuation Committee considers archaeological context when assessing value. A coin found in situ with documented provenance can be worth significantly more than a coin pulled from a drawer. Proper documentation can increase your reward by thousands of pounds. Fifth, understand your right to appeal. If you disagree with the Treasure Valuation Committee's assessment, you have the right to request a review. Independent valuations can be submitted. This process has resulted in increased payments in several documented cases. Knowledge of this law doesn't prevent the Crown's claim. Nothing prevents that. The law is absolute. But understanding the process, the timeline, the documentation, the valuation mechanism, can mean the difference between a fair reward and a fraction of what you deserve. 750 years ago, a king declared that everything precious under English soil belonged to the Crown. In 1996, Parliament confirmed it, updated it, strengthened it. And today, right now, under the garden of every property in England and Wales, the same ancient claim still applies. Terry Herbert found £3.3 million in gold with a metal detector he paid £2.50 for. He did the right thing. He reported every piece. He followed the law. He received a reward, a generous one by most standards, but the gold, the gold his hands pulled from Staffordshire clay, sits behind museum glass now, appreciating in value year after year. He found the treasure. The Crown kept it. And the law that made that possible is 750 years old. So the next time you dig in your garden, maybe check what's there, and then check who it actually belongs to. If this changed how you think about property rights in Britain, share it with someone who owns a home. They need to know this. And watch this video next, where we investigate the 1696 law that cost British families £4.2 billion for having windows